Yeah. Arden Dorn is not going to be here today. Well, he might be online. Not yet, okay. But I'll be leaving the meeting today. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the regular board meeting of the Brownsville Public Utility Board, March 10th, 5 p.m., and we're at the BP Annex Building. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order and get a confirmation for quorum.
Confirmed.
Good. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. We'll have a few moments of silence. Okay, we'll continue to Section D, workshop, public hearings. I think we don't have anything today for that. And we'll move on to the next item, which is public comments.
No public comments.
Okay. Then this will bring us to Section F, consent item. Agenda items. Not sure if everyone got to look at the different items here. Any discussion or motions?
Move to approve consent agenda items.
Okay, I'll get a motion. I gotta have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Daisy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. All right, we'll go on to Section G, item for individual considerations. We'll start with the general manager's report.
Good afternoon, board members. I here have the general manager's report. There's a couple of things that I wanted to note on your calendar. On there, we have, I'm turning myself to that page, one moment. So we have upcoming meetings for SRWA board, the PUB board, and the PubCap meetings that are scheduled on there. Last week, there was members that attended the Customer Service and Communications Conference at TPPA. PUB actually presented at that conference as well, so we have several staff members that were out. As far as other things that are upcoming on here, you'll see other events and meetings. If any of you want to schedule a committee meeting, let me know so we can include it on the next month's calendar, or also start working with your committee members to be a part of that meeting. On here, that is not noted, and my apologies of an oversight, there's a water policy meeting to be held in DC on April 7th to 9th that I was invited to attend with the American Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. In addition to, we have had various different committee meetings at the state legislature. Of those, we had the House Energy Resources Committee meeting, the Senate Business and Commerce, and the House Senate Affairs. Mark Dombrowski tested earlier today at one of the committee meetings as well. And so if any of you want to have any more information of any legislature activities, let us know. I also send you a copy of the bill tracker report for your perusal, and we'll be happy to bring forth any of those bills that are currently at the committee floors. In addition, we also attending a meeting in DC in February 24th and February 26th. I'm not going to go to the details of all the meetings, but in your packet you have a summary of the various meetings held with ABPA, TBPA, and the various representatives for the organization. And that pretty much completes anything, unless anybody wants to specifically talk about any other activities that are going on. Okay.
Any questions, comments?
No.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. We'll move on to item number 2. Consideration and action for any items pulled. There was none. So we'll move on to item number 3. Staff reports for presentations to the board, starting with a financial report.
Yes, good evening, Chair, members of the board. So, my name is Mike Perez. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the financial performance report as of January 31st of 2025. So here we've got the executive summary that focuses on 7 categories. Each category is its own gauge meter, red representing poor, yellow average, and green good. Based on the flow of funds, PUB has generated $787,000 to replenish the improvement fund. Our debt service coverage ratio year-to-date is at 2.12 times, which is well above the 1.25 times requirement. The fuel purchase and energy charge is currently set at 0.0509. This is March is the 7th consecutive month that we've kept that same rate. It has generated an over-recovery year-to-date of $18.93 million as of January 31st, and then this will be used to offset any future market uncertainty. The COB cash transfer on the budget side it's a little lower than budget due to some decrease in adjusted gross revenues, but still at a very good level. Actually, the actual cash distribution or transfer to the city as of January 31st is actually about $210,000 above the same period last year. Personnel and non-personnel expenses came in about $2.1 million under budget, and it's primarily due to some vacancies and some timing issues. BPUB's electric residential average bill is lower than both the average MOU and the IOU bill for the 1,000 kWh user. The current bill would amount to about $111.26. The CIP year-to-date actuals and committed totaled $9.7 million and $30.3 million respectively, which represents 52.5% of the fiscal year 2025 approved plan. So we're doing good there, and all key financial metrics are currently in compliance. Here we've got a condensed statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. We're comparing current year-to-date with the same period last year. So starting off with operating revenues, $73,321,000. This represents an $8.7 million increase from last year. Some minor changes were noted in the base and fuel revenues, but the major item that triggered the change was the $9,492,000 of rate stabilization funds that were used to pay down the customer's production costs back in November and December as approved by the board last year. So year-to-date operating expenses came in at $63,993,000. These were $2.9 million below or above last year's level. We did see an increase of $2 million in contractual and other services and $1.5 million increase in personnel cost, and a decrease in power purchase and fuel of about $600,000. So we end up at line 3, operating income of $9,327,000. Once we back out the net non-operating expenses of $6,697,000, we end up with an income before capital contributions of $2,630,000. Adding in capital contributions of $4,931,000, and PUB ends up with an increase in net position year-to-date through January of $7,562,000. Adding this to the net position at the beginning of the year, we end up with a net position at the end of the period of $482,698,000. Here we've got the condensed statement of revenues and expenses. This is based on the flow of funds in compliance with, in accordance with the bond ordinance. We compare the year-to-date actuals with year-to-date budget. So operating revenues of $70,598,000 came in $13,774,000 below budget. This line item includes both base rate and the fuel revenues, along with the out-system energy sales. So we did see base rate revenues were under budget by $4.3 million. Fuel was under budget by $11 million, and the out-system sales were over budget by $1.5 million. Other revenues were $7,291,000. Those came in $442,000 below budget. We end up at gross revenues of $77,889,000. Once we back out the fuel and SRWA contribution of $24,613,000, we end up with adjusted gross revenues of $53,275,000. This is the basis for the city's 10% transfer calculation, so the city is entitled to $5,327,000. Once we back out the other requirements for the O&M, non-operating expenses, and debt service of $42,347,000, we end up at a balance available after requirements of $10,928,000. Now we back out the total cash and utility benefit to the city of Brownsville of $5,327,000, and we end up with the balance available for transfers out, or PUB uses, of $5,600,000. That $5.6 million funded $4.8 million in transfers out. This was for CIP and then some of the reserve requirements, leaving a balance to replenish the improvement fund of $787,000. This concludes the financial presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 3B. This will be presentation on AMI water meter lids.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have a little show and tell. Do you want to bring up the presentation? Yeah, okay, it's right there. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jaime Aguilar, Division Manager here at Brownsville PUB. I'll be going over the AMI water meter lid effort that we're undergoing. So I'll go ahead and start off by talking about the communication device. Why are we migrating from metal lids to polymer lids? The current endpoint installation recommended by the vendor Badger. Our current environment, what we're doing to mitigate some of the issues that we saw in the field, and also give an update on our current effort, and then followed by a demo, which Eddie has right now. So to begin, so the AMI communication, essentially, it's a Orion cellular endpoint, meaning each individual water meter is going to have a cellular endpoint. That's the communication device. This device transmits on the LTE-M network. It's kind of like a cell phone signal, except it's low-powered and it extends the battery life. It has additional features. For example, you can do remote firmware upgrades, low battery indication, cut wires, tampering, etc. The endpoint by Badger is warranted for 20 years. That means the first 10 years is 100% warranty, and then followed by 11 to 20 years prorated. Badger Meter, our vendor, essentially they have a requirements as far as how to install these endpoints on the field. The picture itself is a depiction of a cross-section of an actual water meter lid. As you can see, we're depicting the brass, the register, and the endpoint. As per Badger's recommendations, is to be installed upright on a non-metal lid. It needs to be at or above grade level, and then also leave enough slack on the wire for when the lid gets picked up for it to have enough wire and not get cut. I do note that the warranty voids if the installation does not follow these guidelines. Therefore, most of our lids are metal lids, so that's why we're doing that transition to polymer lids. This is a depiction of do's and don'ts regarding that installation. For example, the ideal condition is putting them in a non-metal lid at grade level, and then the other two are essentially you're blocking the actual endpoint, therefore impairing the communications. Our current environment. So we surveyed our entire locations, and we surveyed about 43,000 locations have metal lids. Some locations do have less than ideal conditions as per Badger's requirements. Therefore, not all lids are the same shape and size. The picture that you see on the right is a depiction of 3 types of lids that are out in the field. Essentially, we have an elongating lid. If I can do it with the mouth, yeah, elongating lid. This is the ones that we consider the standard lid, and then the circular lid. And again, these are all metal lids that subsequently we're trying to replace with polymer lids. Allegiant is able to perform this change. However, there is a cost associated with it. And these are some further pictures of what our environment looks like. On the left side, you do see a rectangular lid. In the middle, you see a box with no lid, and then on the right, it's a meter vault that we also have to make sure that we mitigate situations like that.
Are those actual pictures of Brownsville?
Of our environment, correct.
It's
Yeah.
here.
So our mitigation strategy, so again, like I mentioned, we identified about 43,000 metal lids. That's what that survey did. So we tasked our meter readers to, since essentially they're going to, on the field to read the meters, we tasked them with a survey. The survey consisted of different factors, for example, the lid shape, for example, elongated, rectangular, standard, et cetera. Also the material of the lid, and also what that lid is surrounded by, either it be dirt or concrete. And then the environment, the condition of the actual lid. Once we got the survey back, we did do a plan. We said, okay, most of the lids are standard lids, so we went ahead and ordered 38,000 polyethylene lids, the polymer lids. We also hired 4 temporary positions to help us with this effort. So essentially, they're doing the lid replacement. So then once we started getting the lids in and we have the staff on hand, the personnel began replacing lids and reporting less than optimal conditions. So for example, some of these lids, for one reason or another, they're not able to fit or there's some additional work needed to be done. So we tasked the personnel to go ahead and write those out for us, and then we'll mitigate them at a later time. The goal of this effort is essentially to be ahead of the Allegiant, which is our meter install vendor. So they're tasked to come in, replace the meter at the endpoint, and move on to the next one. So anything that we can help Allegiant essentially helps us in the utility as far as also saving the cost savings that's associated with us doing that work. And here we predicted about $90,000 worth of cost savings, BPUB doing the work versus the meter install vendor. And essentially, this is our mitigation strategy as it relates to the water meter lids. Not only did we task our meter readers and our temporary personnel to replace lids, we also asked them, if you see any issues with the lids, go ahead and report it back to us so we can create a service request or service order so BPUB can mitigate those issues. These is a snapshot of some of the concerns or issues that they saw out on the field. For example, in some instances, they identified that we need a new box. In other instances, the shape of the lid is not standard. I do note that in other cases, we did detect some water meter leaks, so we went ahead and report those as well. Furthermore, these are some of the other conditions that we've seen. On the left side, you see the round lids. On the middle, you see rectangular, different shape type of lid. On the top right, you do see a meter box that's above grade, above the ground. And then the bottom one is just, it doesn't have a lid. So all of these situations essentially generate a service request for BPUB to go out there and mitigate these locations.
So while we're out there taking a look at everything, we're reporting back anything that we spot that doesn't look right. That way it can get taken care of before the contractor shows up.
So our current effort. So like I mentioned, we did order 38,000 lids. We have received approximately 23,000 lids as of February 21st. We've identified out of those 43,000, about 42,000 of those lids are standard, and we'll show a demo in a little bit. We've installed to date about 14,200 lids, which essentially equates to we've replaced 34% of our locations, and we're pending about 66%. Are there any questions? I do want to note that out of those 14,200 lids that we've installed, we've created about 1,331 service requests. So those are the issues that came back to the utility for us to mitigate. And as of February 21st, we've completed about 37% of those issues.
Is the replacement pretty straightforward, or has there been, I mean, I'm sure you run into some issues, but in general, the replacement is standard?
Yeah, I'm happy to report that we started this effort early February, and like I mentioned, we've done about 34%, so it's trucking along. There hasn't been major issues, and like I mentioned, we did instruct our meter readers, in case if they see anything for whatever reason, the lid doesn't fit properly, don't replace it, report it, bring it back.
And what are we doing with the old lids?
We're bringing it back here to our old warehouse for disposal. And I do want to start on the demo. So for example, this is of the metal lids that we're replacing. This lid weighs 13 pounds. So like I mentioned, the communication device is not able to transmit through that metal device. So we're replacing them with the plastic lid, the polymer lid, which the endpoint will fit through the lid.
You got right through here.
Yeah, so that's as far as the recommendations from Badger. Yeah. Oh, and then this plastic lid weighs 6 pounds, so it is half the weight of the actual metal lid. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, whenever there's instances, we do try to replace all the lids. There has been concerns, or there is the risk of the lids not fitting properly. Those we do instruct our meter readers to bring it back. However, there are instances where, for example, on the left side and on the far right, we have issues where the lid is inside the meter pit. This is certain scenarios, so we do go out to the field and verify that the lid is indeed placed properly. I do want to note that these two locations, we went on the field. As a matter of fact, these are the two images. They do fit perfectly. We also did a type of a test to make sure that they didn't cave in by themselves, with pedestrian traffic. So if it's okay with the board, I'll go ahead and present the video of us doing the little test where we made sure that the lid doesn't cave in.
Quick question. So what happens, it's actually a two-part question. What happens, you have the copper below, right, of the new system that's going to be utilized, or what happens if somebody steals it? Do you guys have a 10%, did you buy, are you going to purchase more? Have you had those instances of people stealing, lids for whatever,
Historically, I guess historically, when I was in customer service, we would run into that every 5 or 6 years. They would steal the steel lids and go sell them at the salvage yard. So we'd have to meet with them and tell them, don't. Obviously, these are water meter lids. They belong to PUB. Don't buy them. So they would steal even the steel lids. So right now, when we take them out, like Jaime said, we're bringing them back, and they're going to be sold off for scrap. The new plastic lids, we're going to run into the same issues. People will mess with them.
Correct.
Like those, the two pictures on the outside that you see, those were pictures that were actually sent in by a customer that was concerned because the lids weren't, as you can see, were not placed right. Now, the pictures on the inside that you see, that's the exact same location where we went back and tested it, and to make sure that they did fit properly. They fit snugly. But you can't stop people from messing with them.
Correct.
So if somebody wants to, there's just no way to stop them, whether it's steel or whether it's plastic.
Okay, but it's not such a big concern, right? It's not.
No, not really, but we do have, Jaime, we'll get to that in a second. We'll show you the demo, and then we have a solution.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So here we're essentially stomping on the lid, making sure that the lid doesn't cave in. That was location 1. And this is location 2. So I will note, between the metal lid and the plastic lid, the size is exactly the same. Obviously, this one's a little bit bulkier towards the bottom, but they're all the same size. So that's why we instruct our meter readers to make sure that the lid sits set properly. For whatever reason, like I mentioned, if it's wobbly or it looks like it's going to cave in, they won't replace the lid. They'll report it back to us.
It's heavy.
Okay, so another effort that our communications and PR department did is we did do a Facebook post letting our customers know if they do experience any of the lids that are misplaced or missing lids to go ahead and report it to Brownsville PUB. Now, following up on the comments where, we can't stop the customer from actually removing or tampering with the lid, we did reach out to the manufacturer of the lids. He came by last week to give us some, to mitigate this issue, and he did propose, the lids do come with a lock and key. Essentially, it's like a little lock and key.
It's a spring-loaded flange here that will keep it in place. You see, it's got a built-in flange there, and then we can buy these locks for $2 and put them in place. So our thought process was, if there's a customer who has a concern, we can just install a lock. And also another option might be if we have if we have areas that have heavy foot traffic, like downtown, we could do the same. And we asked them, like, hey, do you have these issues with any other cities? And they said, every city. It's a common problem.
And again, and the utility will be having these custom keys that, they're the ones that fit in the slot, and they'll be able to open up the lids if work needs to be performed on those locations. Are there any questions?
If you have that at home, I mean, to turn off your water, you should have access, right? You're gonna need a key, or unless,
Typically, customers don't access the meter itself to turn off water.
okay.
Typically, at your house, there's a main
Cutoff
cutoff.
at the house.
Yeah, somewhere on your actual house.
Yeah, that's
On the
correct.
outside, there's a cutoff there. Now, if you needed to, you could. Like in my case, in my home, I would not request that one of these. We would not install a lock on a residential house unless we had a problem.
Sure.
And there was,
Okay.
like, we needed to. So I would still have access, and if there was an emergency and I couldn't find the cutoff valve, or if it was seized, then I could go to the meter and, cut it off.
Okay. And on the old lids, is there a way for us to recover money from that? I mean, if you recycle it, or, I don't know what we're gonna do. You don't have to answer that now, but just food for thought. I mean, if you're removing 43,000 lids, metal lids, there may be some opportunity there.
Yeah, that's the plan. They're being put in a big dumpster, and then they'll be sold for scrap.
Okay. Questions? All righty. Well, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Looking forward for the rest of the deployment of that. Item 3C, drought update. Jaime Flores.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jaime Flores. I'm the Water Resources Administrator, and I'll be giving you the drought update. Currently, we stand at 21.4% U.S. combined ownership at Amistad and Falcon reservoirs. As we look back, we've actually gone down just a percentage point, or a tenth of a percentage point. February 8th was 21.5, February 15th, 21.5, and February 22nd, 21.4%. The National Weather Service March to May outlook, 2025 outlook for the Lower Rio Grande Valley, Deep South Texas region. May 2025 is expected to average out warmer and drier than normal. Drought dryness concerns are expected to continue through the spring season. Despite a drier than normal outlook, showers and thunderstorms could produce heavy rainfall and localized flooding, and has to be taken into consideration, especially in April and May. Confidence remains high that total combined storage will remain at or near record lows throughout the first part of 2025. Again, water conservation is key until further notice. Stage 2, 3 drought restrictions continued through early winter 2025 and are likely to continue until further notice based on inflows from Amistad and Falcon. Again, here's our drought response stages. We're currently at 21.5%, so we're still in stage 2 drought restrictions. That shouldn't change unless we hit 15% or lower for an extended period of time, at least 3 months. And again, here are water use restrictions. This is what we're currently under right now. Lawn irrigation is allowed from 11 p.m. through 6 a.m. and from 6 p.m. through 11 a.m. And depending on the address, on Mondays, it has a difference between the last digits of your address on what days you can water. Residential car washing is also following the same protocol, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Again, we go by the addresses for the watering days that it is allowed. Additional restrictions: non-essential watering is prohibited, such as washing buildings or sidewalks, using water for dust control or allowing water to run off in the streets, and restaurants prohibited from serving water to non-employees except when requested by the non-employee. And should it come to pass, the stage 3 water use restrictions they're exactly the same as stage 2, except they're allowed only once a week for car washing, and for lawn irrigation only once a week as well. And additional restrictions, if it comes to pass, would be adding water to pools except to maintain structural integrity is prohibited. Operation of any outdoor ornamental fountain, pond for aesthetic or scenic purposes is prohibited, except to support aquatic life or where foundation ponds recirculate water. And use of water from scenic and recreational ponds and lakes, resacas, and pumping water into them is prohibited except when necessary to support aquatic life. Additionally, we would have surcharges. Residential would have an allocation of 10,000 gallons per month, and if they exceed that, a surcharge of 1.5 would be added to that. Non-residential, 80% allocation, monthly usage for 12 months, and there will be a surcharge of 1.25 added to that if they exceed that allocation. We have a drought messaging. Alexa Perez was going to present on this section. Is Alexa here? No? Well, then we do have what she did report to us was the website, the drought resources. They had 417 visitors. On social media, we had 5 drought-related content, 2,738 unique viewers, 2,166 views, and 307 interactions. On billboards, we had 6 billboards on 2 different locations and had 73,684 monthly appearances. Drought messaging for BPB TV, lobby messaging, 5,542 monthly traffic. Community presentations, 4 drought-related discussions, and our BPB news strategy launched short format and long format content to inform, educate, entertain through a dynamic communication approach. And that's what you see. Again, this concludes the drought update. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All righty, moving on to item number 4, G4. We're actually going to be tabling that. Do we need to actually vote on it? Or?
Yes, please,
Okay.
action to table.
I got a motion to table from Al.
I would like to make a comment before voting. Is that okay?
Yeah?
Whenever this comes back, I would like to see a comparison between buying and leasing, just because whenever I do the math myself, whenever I'm deciding what to do, there has always been a cost that that you pay for leasing. So before making this decision, I think it would be useful for the board to compare those costs. And I'm fine with tabling.
Okay, so that's the second, and my understanding is some of that information is why we're actually tabling it. So,
Exactly.
That's correct.
That was already previously requested to
All
the
right,
Finance
well-
Committee.
all those in favor to table?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. We'll continue on to item G5, consideration and possible action to authorize the general manager and chief executive officer to enter into a contract with TRB Capital Markets LLC, previously Estrada Hinojosa, for financial advisor services.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Monica Cavazos, Director of Finance. In January, the board took action to authorize the general manager and CEO to negotiate a contract with our existing financial advisor. This action today would then would authorize her to execute the contract. So the prior agreement with Estrada Hinojosa and Company Incorporated, it expired on February 28, 2025. As they disclosed in their RFQ response, during the term of their previous agreement on August 2nd, 2024, Texas State Bankshares, Inc., the registered bank holding company for Texas Regional Bank, completed its acquisition of Estrada Hinojosa and Company, Inc. Estrada Hinojosa now operates under TRB Capital Markets, LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Texas Regional Bank, using the assumed name of Estrada Hinojosa. As such, the official name of the financial advisor has changed. The attached agreement with TRB Capital Markets, LLC, doing business as Estrada Hinojosa, is for a term of 2 years with the option to renew for 3 additional one-year terms and is ready to execute upon approval of the board. Are there any questions on this item? If not, I can proceed with reading the recommended action.
No questions. I think we've discussed this before. So it's just continuing of the process.
Yes. So the recommended action is to authorize the general manager and chief executive officer to accept and sign the proposed contract with TRB Capital Markets, LLC, doing business as Estrada Hinojosa, as presented in your packets.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I would approve, but if I can make one subject to, there's no conflicts between this contract and a bank depository agreement. As we voted last month for our bank depository to go to Texas Regional Bankshares. I don't think there's a conflict, I just want to make sure.
Correct. These are two distinct types of services, and this is a wholly owned subsidiary performing the financial advisor services.
Right.
So there's no conflict.
Right, so I'll make a motion to approve, just subject to council determination that there is no conflict.
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item G6, discussion and possible action on the use of Resaca fee funds.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So this item was added to the agenda at the request of the board, and it's really meant for board deliberation. We did prepare a presentation. Most of this information had previously already been presented. So what's new is it's really a list of some funding options. The presentation is attached to your agenda. At this point, I will follow the board's lead as to whether you all want me to make the presentation or whether you all want to just jump into the discussions.
I think if you can, it's a short presentation, only a couple of slides if you don't mind, just kicking us off with reviewing of that.
Okay, sure. So this is something that's already been presented to the board. Our current strategic path, we do want to maintain capabilities for the Resaca program and continue ongoing dredging operations. We continue, we want to complete Restore Phase 1. That contract's already been issued to Ferguson Construction, and it's going to be fully grant funded. We intend to fund the Bureau of Reclamation Resaca de la Guerra Resiliency Restoration matching share of $1.65 million. The total contract is $4.65 million. We did get a $3 million grant award, and the $1.65 will be covered with existing funds in Resaca. Or the current equipment, the watering equipment is at its end of life, and so we do need to acquire some new equipment for operations. And of course, we do want to fund the core contract one matching share of $1.09 million. This is the JAGU Resaca, and so the funds as well have already been set aside there in the fund. So we do ask that the board to advise us on a strategic path to consider, and then once given direction, BPUB staff will conduct the analysis to compare selected strategic path. We will bring back to the board any necessary documents or resolutions at a future board meeting. So we'll leave that up to the board. Here we just wanted to show the uses of the current existing fund in the Resaca fees. The balance as of January 31 is $7,162,000. As mentioned earlier, we would fund the core, contract one, $1,085,000. This is Jagur Resaca. And again, the Restore Ferguson contract, that's already been, it's ongoing and it's fully grant funded, so it's zero, we won't need to access any of the funds. We will then fund the BOR, the Bureau of Reclamation Resaca de la Guerra Resilience and Restoration local match of $1,654,000, leaving a balance of $4.4 million for the dewatering operation equipment needs. So this is the Resaca fee options that were put together, and thanks to Mr. Martinez for guiding us in this endeavor. So I'll just go over some of the options here. Option A really is to continue the ongoing dredging operations. We figured that it would take a crew of 6 to continue the just ongoing dredging operations of the resacas that we need for water storage and our reservoirs. We will also complete Restore Phase 1, which is the contract is already ongoing, complete the core Project 1, and fund the board matching requirements. And then not pursue any future projects under Restore or the core, right? So as identified earlier, the intent is to fund the core contract 1 and the BOR with existing funds. So the projected Resaca fee here at the end does not or excludes those costs, because we're going to fund those with existing funds. So under option A, we will need $1 million annually going forward, and that would translate to about $1.67 Resaca fee per water account. Option B?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure if we need for him to go through all the different options. Yeah, so, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you, Mike. I think the high level here was just the idea to break down the understanding of the fee, you know, the different components, and some of the potential projects, you know, that we've been discussing, and some potential future projects, for example, the Restore Phase 2 through 4. I think we've all reviewed already the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you know, projects 1, projects 2 to 16, and so on and so forth. And the idea was to get an idea of the impact to the Resaca fee itself. I think the rest is pretty self-explanatory. I think right now, we're probably at a standstill on option C, which basically is, you know, the plan is to continue with all the different activities. And even though the total Resaca fee is higher than what it is now, as you guys are aware, we voted to hold the fee at a certain level up until, you know, we would make a decision in the future. So I don't know if there's any specific questions. Again, this item was just some time for us to discuss as a board. We've had, you know, individual meetings or, you know, specific requests from the team here, and it was just really just some space for us to talk about it, get any thoughts or specific questions. So I'll open it up to that.
So here, what is labeled BPUB ongoing dredging operations, that is not really serving, you know, the original goal. This is a question. Is that serving the original goal of maintaining and improving resacas in Brownsville, or is it specifically for our needs?
It's specifically for our needs, our water storage. Dredging of the Cromac Resaca so that we can continue with the reuse plan from the Robindale to be able to bring the water to water plant number 2, and then dredging at our reservoirs at water plant 1.
And that is because the other, because the city might be taking on other responsibilities?
Right now, the responsibilities that we have in the fee includes dredging operations. When the water rates were presented, they were presented with a Resaca fee. They were both, in other words, concurrently. You take away from the rates, you put it into a fee, and this is how the mitigation plan, or not mitigation, how the rates worked out. So this is options that are available for you all to discuss. How do you want us to proceed? Those are policy discussions that we previously spoke at the December 10th meeting to discuss on various different Resaca responsibilities and coordination. At the time, currently, BPUB coordinates with multiple different agencies throughout the cities in various different Resacas that are there. And so we divert water from the Rio Grande, the Resaca de la Guerra, and it goes into the water treatment number 2. We conduct dredging operations at various different Resacas depending on what the strategic nature of that is. Other past decisions were made prior to my arrival and how we got there. And right now, continuing dredging operations for augmenting an additional water source since we're in a drought, and increasing water supply in case of any type of emergency conditions we need to pull water from the Resacas. So that is for all water customers and for everybody as a benefit, as an alternate water supply. As surplus water comes down the river, we can park it and leave it there and help us as other water comes down the streams and various different things. Right now, we are experiencing a drought, as we mentioned, and we understand that this board wants to look into various different options, which is why we're presenting the options, and then once we get policy direction, we will come back with the necessary documents for you all to consider, and then make a recommendation to the city.
Yeah, so I think, just to add to that, we were the ones who requested for that to be kind of sliced into this category, so we could understand what is absolutely needed in order for us, PUB, continue operations of our water treatment.
But in the past, how much has been spent on the dredging of Resacas?
I'm going to flip you back to your actually meeting minutes. In your meeting minutes, if you go back into that earlier packet, there's an item that has the presentation that was made before the December 10th meeting. And in there, if you go back, it's labeled page 19, but I'm not sure in your book. If you just go to the end of that particular item, it gives you the overall 10-year or a little bit more than since
It's
Resaca
right here.
operations. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's right there on the screen.
So that's the answer to your question.
So in some years, it was less than $1 million. And this, so it would be the top row, right? And that's the in-house dredging? That is not
Rows
Restore?
1 and 2.
Right, right.
It's
But
just-
it does not include Restore. It would be the
No,
top
Restore
set.
didn't really start up until 2021. So in 2021, you see there's a breakdown of when Restore, we started incurring those expenses for Restore. So prior to that, it was just our own in-house dredging we're doing.
And then capital there, I guess, needed to do that.
Was the dredgers that we purchased and the dewatering system.
So I have a few questions. One, if we are to consider keeping a fee to support this in-house dredging, there needs to be a very clear strategy for what the needs of the community are and what, and really, yeah, really understanding, because right now, what we don't really have an answer whenever a ratepayer or resident asks, why this Resaca and not that? Why not my backyard? So I think that a plan moving forward would be really helpful. I mean, the way Resaca master plan. If we're going to keep collecting money to support in-house dredging, that would also give us metrics that where we can hold ourselves accountable and we have to be held accountable by the people who are paying this fee as well. We need to be able to have a plan for, okay, within the next year, our goal is to do X, Y, Z, and then at the end of the year, we need to be able to say, did we accomplish that or not? In the absence of such a plan and such metrics, being able to be, again, transparent and accountable is really difficult.
Yeah, I think, at least, just reverting to the ongoing dredging, I think part of this is what it's telling us is that we need at least that part, independent of any resacas that we work on in the future, that is something, we need to have that capability in-house in order to maintain our system. I mean, we could maybe contract that out, which is a different conversation, but we need to have that capability in order to continue to run the water treatment operation.
If we need that in order to run the water treatment operation, then it should really come from our water rates. I have heard no reasonable way to explain why it does not.
When we went through the cost of service study for the water wastewater, the board at the time elected to separate the resaca fee from the water-based rates. And so that's the reason the resaca fee was established. I mean,
Yeah, I guess that's
Yes.
kind of what Marilyn mentioned a few minutes ago, saying that, wrong or right, it was added, so it was taken out of the normal water.
correct.
And added to this fee that was approved, for not just the use of operation, but for other upcoming projects.
So I will pose the question to the members of this board. Are you okay with charging a flat rate for, water system needs?
I will say that I'm in agreement that separated, it's explainable to the public that what we're doing and it's not being included in the water rate. You know what I mean? So if we're including that fee in the water rate, how do you explain what they're gonna come back and ask, like, okay, so I'm being charged $80 per, the bill. Where is the fee, the resaca fee included in this? Instead of having it separate. I don't know about the board the last time that they did that, but they had a reasoning behind it, no?
Yeah.
For me, it's best to keep it separate, that they know how much they're paying for that. That's how I see it.
To me, it really doesn't matter if it's separate or if it's just part of the one fee. I mean, if it's separate, people know exactly what it's used for. It's a little bit easier for a customer to say, okay, this line item, this is what it is, as opposed to just bundling it up in a package of fees.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why it matters is because it is not tied to consumption. It means that some people are subsidizing others.
Well, I was under the impression we're talking about dredging, right? And having it be as a water source to help with our whole total water plan, which would benefit everybody. So if there's an issue with water, you have to diversify your sources and all of your resources as well. And if this is part of that, it's not the answer, it's just a small part of the answer, and it benefits the entire community. That's what my thinking was. I don't know if is that right, Mike, or am I off on that? Is that?
Well, I'll add a comment here. So I think there is an opportunity for us to explore the different size customers. I'm not really too sure what the correct terminology is, but based on usage, I assume that the water lines going to, the specific customer is going to vary, from residential size to industrial size. So there may be an opportunity there for us to separate that and maybe better distribute the fee from that perspective. So I think that's worth us exploring to see, within the ordinance, what's possible for us to consider.
I mean, correct me or clarify this, but I mean, if you bundle it into the fee, you're still gonna have the same expenses if you're gonna do with dredging, so you're gonna pay for it anyway. You're not gonna say, this group of payers we're gonna deduct that fee from them. I mean, we're gonna ensure that the work that is being done is gonna affect all water users, right?
Correct, correct. But I guess what Dr. Zamora is referring to is that the way the fee got set up, it was on a per water account basis. There were various options that were provided to the previous board. Based on consumption was one of them.
Okay.
Based on meter size was another one, and
Okay.
so forth. And the board at the time elected a per account charge.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, so I think, even though the board voted before on this, maybe it's something that we could consider changing. If that's something within our capability as a board, it sounds like there's interest, or at least some interest in us exploring that and potentially voting on that in the future. So maybe we can bring up some of that old information and just see, what was the logic. We may not agree with the previous board vote, but at least we'll understand some of the data.
That'd be good to look at.
It's a good idea.
And regarding, that's on the dredging just for the operation, right? There's other potential Resaca projects, Restore 2 to 4. And then obviously the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I think those have been in discussions as well. At least with the Corps of Engineers, the city is leading that discussion. So that's still kind of a TBD, right? So I'm not sure we can vote on anything there, right? Or change anything at the moment, at least.
I think that, again, without understanding what the needs of the city in terms of its resacas are, it's really difficult to assess the importance of, for example, the Corps of Engineers project. I know that it can provide a lot of value, but I don't know that it is what, is consistent with what the needs are. I think that's really for me, the basic question. I don't think that option C is feasible or desirable, but I hope that, for example, something like D can be worked out with a lower local match and no fee simple. I know that those negotiations are going to take time, but I think that would be a lot more acceptable for the city.
Yep. So if I'm understanding correctly, also just to give some guidance to the team, is for the resacas that are within the PUB boundaries, if we can highlight that again. I think we've looked at maybe a picture of that before. And then we can have a discussion on, independent of these Restore and Corps of Engineer projects, if the resacas are something that we're gonna work on as PUB, what the high level plan would be as far as dredging, these resacas that are within our boundary.
Will do. If we move on to the Resaca policy considerations, next slide, that was previously also provided at a previous meeting. These are the questions that we would need to understand thoroughly to come up with an actual fee and decisions for us to come bring options to you. Specifically, which agency, if any, will be tasked with the following operations is really important for us to understand, and these are things that the city has already mentioned to us that they wanted to wait until later on this year when they finish their assessment of other operations they have going. But for us, for sure, we need to continue dredging operations of the Resaca de la Guerra, and we've identified those activities to be approximately $1 million a year, and we need to sustain that operation about 1.67.
What's the timeline for when you can bring it back to the board to look at the different options on how it was voted in the past and what we can do moving forward.
Well, I think what she's saying is she needs these questions answered, not for the previous information that was voted on, but for them to make a plan going forward, because this would have an impact as far as cost is concerned, right?
Right, but there are different costs, right? Some costs are for providing a service, right, to the community, improving and maintaining resacas, right? That's a service that, this is how PUB started doing resaca maintenance and improvement, right, about 10 years ago, cleaning up Old Town Resaca, the resaca, not Old Town, Town Resaca, around the zoo. And as a community member, you know, I'm very appreciative that that was done. That was an area that was, you know, very much in need of cleaning, and PUB did it without getting, you know, any resaca fee, right? This is way before the resaca fee. But right now, right, things, you know, the landscape has shifted, and if we're talking about costs that are related to this, you know, community service, right? This is my opinion as a board member, I'm totally fine getting those costs from a resaca fee. But if we're talking about costs that are for our own system improvements, then I think those should be part of the water rates. That's the distinction I'm making. So that's regardless of the other decisions that we're waiting on City Commission to make, as to, you know, what other duties they will like to take on as part of their drainage and flood control.
Okay, so I think there's still maybe a little bit more questions, but just tying it back to why this item was here is just for us to have some level of discussion, try to provide some more clarity. We'll continue to work on this and potentially bring this back soon. It has been a topic of discussion, a lot of energy put into it, so I appreciate all the work, and but I think there's still a little more work to do as far as clarifying some of these open questions.
Is
Yeah.
there, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you provide us with a timeline for informing the public of what has been already done with the revenues from the resaca fee?
I did send an email of our resaca strategy plan. If you haven't seen it, I will forward it again to the full board. I believe I only sent it to you, Dr. Zamora, but I'll go back and check my inbox to make sure it went out.
And this will include, again, a short summary.
The
for-
summary we've been
for-
working on, and so we have that summary that had the list of the things to be going on there, and we will come back with you with a short summary of the various different presentations. If it's a communication plan, we will be happy to bring back at a program meeting or back to this board for the full body consideration, the communication plan, but we have that in place.
So potentially at the next meeting, we can approve a communication.
I'm going to defer right now to our Chief Administrative Officer because she's the one who has work plans in place and where she is, and she might be able to opine at this time.
So we do have a resaca communications plan that was forwarded, I believe, to the Vice Chair and Chair. I do not believe it was forwarded to everyone. However, we would be happy to do so. And I'll be happy to report that actually part of the plan, the communication plan, is already out. We've posted information on how the resaca fee is being used to the public via a series of commercials and the first one has already been rolled out. So feel free to visit our social media page on Facebook so you can get that information. And we'll be happy to send that other information to the rest of the board tonight. I do not believe that we have a strict timeline. It's because production actually on the different formats of communication varies, and we don't have that tied down just yet. But we will continue to roll out the information towards the community as soon as possible.
Can an email be sent out with a summary?
Of course, we'll
Yes,
be able
Mrs.
to
Summer,
forward
we,
that.
we already have it. We'll just revamp it, forward it, and provide the information.
Yeah, I mean, I think, my understanding, Connie, is that that work was started based from the joint meeting with the commission.
That is
So
correct.
even though
When-
we have a request now, or we have been having a request, you and the team took it upon yourself based on the discussion or request there, to make a plan as far as how this was gonna be deployed.
That's
et cetera.
correct. We took Commissioner Villarreal's request to heart, and we started working since then.
Thank you.
All righty, so, again, we may still have some more discussions around this. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And, but it's important for us to clarify and for us to feel informed to make, the correct decisions. But I think we can move on.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we are, thank you, Mike. We're going to be going into closed meeting, so I will read this before we do, and then we'll motion to go into closed session. So at this time, the item on the agenda designated for closed meeting will be considered if there is an approved motion to go into closed meeting, and listeners will be placed on hold until the board returns to open meeting. Item number 1 is meeting with the board's legal counsel for advice about contemplated and pending court and administrative litigation, and on matters in which the duty of the attorney under the Texas Disciplinary Rule of Professional Conduct conflicts with Chapter 551, Section 551.071, including but not limited to the following. A, reports of local and special counsel, including regarding potential and pending litigation. B, updates on pending discussion with the City of Brownsville, including MOU. C, updates on contract negotiation related to large-scale business developments. And D, exposure to effects of tariffs. Item number 2 is presentation and discussion and possible recommendations of information upon pricing of purchase power, generation, and fuel, and their impact upon the fuel purchase energy and marketing charge. And item 3, review and consider potential electric service agreements within the multiple certified electric service areas under 102-17B, Brownsville Court of Ordinance, authorizing the general manager and CEO to finalize negotiation on same. So do I have a motion to go into closed?
Mr. Chairman, just to note that item 2 is under 551.086.
Okay.
And item 3 is under both 551.086 and 551.087 of the Open
Thank you.
Meetings Act.
Motion?
A motion to go into closed session?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
The time is 6:08.
Yeah, the time is 6:08. Okay, so it's 7:43, and we're reconvening for open meeting. Starting with item I, number 1, consideration and possible action on items discussed in closed meeting.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Gonzalez, General Counsel, Chief Legal Officer. If we may indulge the board by addressing items 2 and 3 first, and noting for the record that Mr. Villarreal left the closed session at 7:36 p.m.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 2 then. Consideration and possible action to approve and authorize the general manager and CEO to finalize negotiations and execute an unmetered electric service agreement within the multiple certified electric service area under 102-17B Brownsville Code of Ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the Brownsville Public Utilities Board staff created the enclosed unmetered electric service agreement to provide retail service to 9 unmetered electric services requested by Madeira Properties Limited, the customer, which is to power security cameras installed on customer-owned poles at Acacia Place at Madeira Phase 1 subdivision. This customer has indicated that the installation of the security cameras is intended to deter crime and will be powered on a 24-hour basis and connected to the Brownsville PD via fiber optic connection. BPUB staff recommends that this agreement be approved pursuant to Section 102-17B of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Brownsville, Texas.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
I move to approve. Motion to approve.
I second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Just for the record, Mr. Villarreal was going to abstain from this particular item.
Yeah.
Any abstains? 1. So Al will abstain, and you have 3 yeses.
So item 3 is with regard to consideration and possible action to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Brownsville Public Utilities Board and the City of Brownsville, Texas regarding services provided to each other and authorizing the general manager and chief executive officer to execute the same. As the board has discussed in a recent joint meeting with the City Commission, the staff of both the city and PUB have coordinated and negotiated an MOU, a type of master services agreement, to address how non-metered types of services will be coordinated between the entities consistent with charter objectives. The most recent draft is presented for consideration and discussion. Aspects of negotiations have been discussed in prior closed sessions. If approved, the MOU may be executed and forwarded to the City Commission for consideration and possible action. Any potential action here is at the board's discretion.
Okay, do I have any motions for item number 3?
I make a motion.
I second that.
Is the motion to authorize the city manager
Yes,
to
as
execute and
stated.
And I
forward?
second that to approve it.
Okay, is that okay, Paul?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Pequeño will present the last item.
Yep.
Yes, good evening. With respect to consultation on contemplated and/or pending litigation, is there a motion to authorize legal counsel to negotiate on the Texas Gas Service claim up to the amount discussed in closed, or to proceed with suit if the amount cannot be negotiated?
Absolutely. I make a motion, sorry.
I have a motion, a second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All righty, so jumping up to item J, consideration and actions for future agenda items. No motions. So we're good to adjourn. Any motions to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.